this is a really well thought out facility. I'm impressed. But being a teaching hospital, shouldn't you have a skeleton hanging around here somewhere? When I was over at the coffee bar fixing my coffee, I was asked if I was going to discuss regression. Regression, which is a phase 2 theta state, is beyond the scope of what we have time for today. Although regression isn't used with every patient, it's very useful in determining the root source of conversion disorder, among other things. I'll be glad to cover it at another time. I'm a behavioral therapist, board certified in both clinical and medical hypnosis. Let's start at the very beginning. We're all born with only two fears: loud noises and falling backwards. Everything else is taught and learned. We're not born afraid of spiders, snakes, heights, or public speaking. But somewhere along the line, fears are embedded in us. We're going to visit today about an incredibly interesting subject, the mind. We will also be discussing hypnosis. Research into hypnosis experienced a surge back in 1955 when the British Medical Association, and then in 1958 when the AMA declared hypnosis to be a qualifying medical modality. Hopefully this lecture will be of some use to you in your practice. We're going to deal with the mind and how it works. We're going to detail ways its power is unlocked and how hypnosis relates to the subconscious mind, and to discover which mind is 90% more powerful, the conscious or the subconscious. Although we won't be covering the autonomic nervous system, it is a part of the subconscious, and as you already know, it controls our eye blinking, breathing, blood pressure, digestion, heartbeat, swallowing, and the body's ability to heal itself. Today we're going to discuss the 4 different states or modes of the mind. They range from beta to delta. The mind has 4 modes, and it can shift seamlessly into and out of these modes far smoother than the finest car transmission. It can go from one mode to another without the individual realizing it. For example, if I ask someone, "What time did you fall asleep last night?" no one can answer without using the word about. About 10 o'clock, about 9:30, or whatever. We have no way of knowing exactly when we went to sleep. We might know what time it was when we last looked at a clock, but we can't know for sure what time it was when we drifted off. The 4 modes of the mind are beta, which is the fully engaged conscious mind. It's also called the critical or analytical mind. The beta mind runs at 15,000 to 20,000 cycles a second. It's responsible for math, verbal, analyzing, and linear thinking. Our only 2 problem solvers, however, our imagination and creativity, are absent in the conscious mind. This means that we analyze in beta, and then we find solutions and solve problems in alpha. The subconscious mind is made up of the alpha, theta, and delta states. The subconscious mind is the one that's 90% more powerful. It's where we find our personality, habits, memory banks, moods, imagination, creativity, and the cognitive maps, which are likened to our autopilot, directing many of our actions without us needing to think about them. When I first see a patient for any kind of addiction, I say to them, "You put your shoe on the same foot first every day." I watch them as they are mulling this over, trying to remember if they do put their shoe on the same foot first. I ask them, "Do you know why you do this?" They generally answer, "Habit." I ask them, "But where did this habit come from?" They don't know. I explain, when you were only 1 or 2 days old, your mom put your sock, boot, or your shoe on the same foot first every day. She did this without even thinking about it. But this went into your cognitive maps as the right thing to do. When we're reading a book and get lost in it, when our mind wanders, when we drive past our exit, we're in our alpha mind. At these times, we're on physical autopilot. Likewise, when we ballroom dance, paint, or knit. The first level of the subconscious is alpha. Alpha runs at 9,000 to 14,000 cycles a second. It's slower than beta, but with higher wave amplitude. Alpha waves are found in highly creative and intuitive individuals that can evaluate and solve problems. I know I'm silly. In alpha, in addition to our creativity and imagination, we also have relaxation and serenity. Alpha waves result in increased learning rates and superior problem-solving abilities. When we relax, meditate, or solve problems, we're in alpha. Why is this important? It's because those that relax more, daydream, and use hypnosis generate more alpha waves than those that don't. Spending more time in alpha will increase one's insight and the ability to find solutions and to further develop their prefrontal cortex. The alpha state is where our thoughts and concepts come together, our epiphanies. If one wants permanent behavioral change, one must visualize the desired change in the subconscious, not the conscious mind. Visualizing in the conscious mind can yield only temporary results. This short-term motivation or behavioral change lasts for only a few hours, or at best for only 1 or 2 days. After I finish a speech, I always talk to members of the audience that stayed to ask questions. Always, several will come up excited about a motivational or self-help book that they've read. Often they ask me for my opinion of it. I always politely respond, "It won't hurt you." This surprises them, and they re-ask the question. I reply again, "It won't hurt you." They think I've misunderstood them, and they ask it again. And again I reply, "It won't hurt you, but neither will it enable you to make permanent behavioral change." Because permanent behavioral change can only occur in the subconscious mind. And that's where the cognitive maps are located. But when one is reading a book, they're processing the data with their conscious mind. This is fine for understanding and learning the material intellectually, but it won't enable one to make permanent behavioral change. Again, permanent behavioral change can only take place in the subconscious mind. And the only way that we can deliberately access the subconscious mind is through hypnosis. Hypnosis is the bridge to the subconscious mind. The way that one will deal with a situation, how one will most likely respond or react to incidents, and when and how one is likely to initiate actions are programmed into the cognitive maps. These maps can't be changed long-term in the conscious mind because they aren't located there. That's why efforts utilizing the conscious mind to make behavioral change won't be permanent. Now let's move on to theta. Theta is a deeper level of the subconscious, running even slower at between 5,000 and 9,000 cycles a second. Theta waves have greater amplitude than alpha. This is where we find serenity, relaxation, creativity, and somnambulism, plus the ability to solve even more complex problems. When one wakes up with a solution to a problem, it came from theta. Hypnosis, which is actually controlled daydreaming, is a naturally occurring state. Hypnosis isn't something that's done to someone. It's a dissociative state that one freely allows themselves to enter. One cannot be hypnotized against one's will, and one cannot be hypnotized into doing something that they don't want to do. If an individual presents to become a non-smoker or to lose weight, I always ask them if they want to stop smoking or lose. If they say that someone else wants them to stop smoking and they themselves don't want to, it cannot happen. And hypnosis more correctly describes the state than under hypnosis. Hypnosis occurs in both alpha and theta, and although hypnosis in alpha isn't as deep as theta, it's still very effective. The fourth state is delta. Think of delta as deep sleep. In delta, the mind runs at only 1,500 to 4,000 cycles a second. Just enough brain activity for breathing, to keep the heart running, for digestion and other bodily functions. But every 90 minutes, our sleep cycle changes. The mind begins to run faster and shifts from delta up into theta. As the frequency climbs even higher, we experience REM, rapid eye movement sleep. In REM sleep, a dream that seemed to go on for hours actually lasted from only 13 to 17 seconds. During REM sleep, our subconscious mind can process up to 8 hours of data in only 5 minutes. It's the way we learn when we're asleep. Our life is more efficient when we use our subconscious mind. But many people just bounce back and forth between beta, the fully engaged conscious mind, and delta, which is the sleep mode. I once had a woman come in for weight loss. Now, if you've ever driven a car with a stick shift, you know that you can shift from first gear directly into fourth and miss second and third. It's not good for your car, and it's not an efficient way to drive it, but it can be done. That's how this woman lived her life. She went from beta to delta every day. She missed alpha and theta, those two vital states that are capable of solving problems and figuring things out. Here was one of her typical days. She woke up 4:45 and rushed off to the gym. She'd pick up fast food and breakfast and eat it and wash it down with coffee on the way home. Once home, she'd kick off her shoes, jump out of her clothes, and into the shower. She'd phone, text, or email while dressing and putting on her makeup. She never slowed down. She never thought. She never reflected. Never enjoyed the moment. Always wired and in motion. She was a personable and otherwise intelligent woman who ran the East Coast for a pharmaceutical firm. But she never took any time to think and reflect. She was always in high gear, beta. She was nervous. She had IBS. She had skin problems caused by stress, and she wasn't happy. Every night she and her husband would go out for dinner and split 4 bottles of wine. She texted and emailed throughout the meal while he sat there and watched sports on the TV monitors. In addition to being a depressant, clinical studies prove that drinking alcohol in even lesser amounts will shrink the brain's mass by 17% while killing off a significant number of brain cells. At home they'd have a nightcap, and then she'd pass out. All that alcohol deadened her brain, so her subconscious mind couldn't produce anything of any value to her during her sleep. And since she never allowed her mind to get out of beta during the day, her subconscious mind couldn't help her then either. Being always worked up, she was an adrenaline junkie. Her stress load meant she was also generating cortisol. Adrenaline and cortisol slow down weight loss. She spent 0 time in her subconscious mind relaxing and daydreaming. Those are a major source of solutions and ideas, but they were foreign to her. Let's review some of this for a moment. We analyze in beta, the conscious mind, but we solve problems in the subconscious mind as our memory banks, creativity are located in the subconscious mind. Doesn't it make sense that we should spend more time there? Hypnosis, relaxing, and daydreaming are the prime tools for problem solving. She did none of that. That unfortunate woman's life was totally out of balance. But there are other ways that keep us from using our subconscious mind as well. Texting, twittering, and multitasking occur in the conscious mind, and one can't be in both the conscious mind and the subconscious mind at the same time. Texting, twittering, and gaming access the very same neuroreceptors that hard drugs do. I watch people texting and twittering nonstop. What are they saying? Why do they feel the need to say it? And who are they saying it to? Studies show that teenagers and most young adults spend 7 screen hours a day texting, twittering, emailing, gaming, blogging, or watching TV. 7 hours! Spending that much time pursuing entertainment is another sign of a life that's out of balance. Studies from some of the leading business schools now indicate that over 90% of all business texting is CYA or otherwise useless. Whatever amount of time is spent texting, twittering, or blogging is not available for the subconscious to solve problems or come up with ways to develop new ideas, further one's education, to invent, to develop, or innovate. I'm not going to spend my evenings watching American Idiot, Dancing with Whoever, or mindless sitcoms and TV shows. You can bet that the people that appear on those shows wouldn't watch you. If one is spending 3 hours a night on TV, that's subtracting a like amount of time that could be invested in something that give one a fuller and more productive life. Many individuals pat themselves on the back and say that they're great multitaskers. Let me explain a fact to you. When one thinks they're multitasking and doing 2 tasks at once, they're not. They're rapidly switching back and forth between them. When one does that, they must lose focus on the first task and then focus on the second, third, fourth, or fifth. One must always first unfocus on one and then refocus on the next. It's impossible to focus on 2 tasks at the same time. Would you want a neurosurgeon that's operating on you or a loved one's brain to be focused on the surgery or on an investment? Do you want the pilot that is flying a plane that you're on to be twittering, texting, and gaming, or focusing on flying the airplane? The pilots of US Air 1590, that's the one that landed in the Hudson River, weren't multitasking. They were focused on making a safe landing. Texting, twittering, and video games have one responding to cues, not initiating actions. Did you know that ADD, ADHD, or whatever the current acronym is that's in vogue for explaining away the newest crop of attention deficit disorders didn't become prevalent until 2000? Texting didn't become commonplace until 1999. Coincidence? Could there be a connection between some attention deficit problems and the fewer amounts of activities that require imagination instead of only responses? I'm not advancing the premise that all attention deficit disorders come from those distractions, but it is a component. Many children that have been diagnosed with and present with ADD, ADHD, after many hours of therapy, I explain to their parents I believe that they are BB instead of ADD or ADHD. Bright and bored. Much of the subject material is slowed down to accommodate the lowest common denominator. And these kids' minds simply wander. So many great minds were thought to be slow, but were really bright. Think about it. I've seen many adults that were functioning far below their capabilities because they were told by those that were in authority or those they respected that they had either a learning disability or ADHD. So that's how they saw themselves, and that's how they performed. We cannot perform in a manner that is inconsistent with how we see ourselves. Inability to focus is also a presenting complaint for both adults and children that we see in our practice. Parents either present themselves and or bring their children in because they're having problems focusing. They say that they or their children seem to always be in a brain fog, and many children and adults can't stand to be alone and are unable to be content with their own company. Many continually need stimulation by outside sources. One must let themselves spool down and allow their subconscious mind to develop ideas, plans, thoughts, and solutions. We visited about that incredible electrochemical computer called the mind. The power of the mind can be enhanced by reflecting more, thinking more, daydreaming more, and texting, twittering, video gaming, and keeping one's mind occupied in the pursuit of entertainment less. Some individuals use entertainment to distract themselves from fears and worries. Worry is always about something that only might happen in the future. But what happens when one wants to relax but are too upset to do so? Can hypnosis offer help to that person? Can hypnosis ameliorate those times when one is overcome by fear, worry, and doubt? Absolutely. Hypnosis reaches past the conscious mind to the subconscious mind where we can find serenity and calmness. In hypnosis, I give many people a trigger that they can use to calm themselves down and relax and focus. In fact, I will say to them, wherever you are, confronted by uncertainty, a problem, doubt, or fear, and then we give them a trigger that can cause them to immediately calm down. Neat, isn't it? When we visited about attempting to make permanent behavioral change in the conscious mind, we found out that it was impossible to do so. For this reason, admonitions to relax, loosen up, don't worry, and chill out don't work very well. If you want to really relax, use hypnosis. Studies have repeatedly revealed that 8 minutes in hypnosis feels as refreshing as 3.5 hours of really good sleep. Don't wonder if you can be hypnotized. You can. My dissertation was based on the premise that the higher the intellect, the better the subject. I've not ever seen anything in my practice that would contradict that. Also, a strong personality is a plus, not a minus. In the cases where one wants to stop worrying and can't, hypnosis is the ideal therapy. As I travel around the country, occasionally I'm asked to comment on stage hypnosis. I refrain from doing so. But I will say this. The similarity between whatever it is they do and our serious work is like comparing the interns that act like middle school kids on Grey's Anatomy to a resident at Emory or another fine medical school. There isn't any comparison. Hypnosis is based on science, not chicanery. All of the early researchers were physicians and scientists, not showmen. Scottish physician Dr. James Braid is believed to be the first to have used the word hypnosis. And Dr. James S. Dale, who documented over 300 surgeries with hypnosis being his sole anesthesia, coined the term hypnoanesthesia while practicing in India. Dr. John Elliotson was the first British doctor to use the stethoscope for physical exams. These scientists were pioneers in the study of hypnosis when it wasn't that easy to even be associated with hypnosis. Life was difficult in England and France at that time. Entertainment, such as it was for the masses, was crude and without taste. What passed for entertainment was the morbidly obese, the bearded ladies, and other anomalies, both real and contrived. They were displayed, mocked, and laughed at what were called freak shows. It was also considered sport to laugh at some hapless person that was given an unhealthy amount of nitrous oxide by a non-physician. I'm sure you've seen the movie about the tragic life of John Merrick, known as the Elephant Man. The movie accurately portrayed what life was like and the conditions found in those freak shows during that horrible period. Those that were purported to be under hypnosis performed as instructed, or as they otherwise imagined that was how someone that was hypnotized would act. These con men These showmen were exploiters. Hypnosis and nitrous oxide were used for entertainment, not for the medical use for which they were intended. Nitrous oxide was originally developed as an aid for tooth extractions. It's still used in dentistry for that purpose. It's also used as an adjunct to general anesthesia. Nitrous oxide still has the stigma of being called laughing gas. And so hypnosis and nitrous oxide were not taken seriously by the medical community for some time. Horror movies and stage shows added to the retardation of research and the application of hypnosis in medicine. Since the blood pressure cuff wouldn't come into general use until 1901, no one knew just how much chloroform or ether to administer. This resulted in some patients dying, not from the surgery, but from the anesthesia. In fact, the mortality rate at that time for surgery was 40%. Those doctors turned to hypnosis. Dr. John Elliotson, professor of surgery at the University College in London, documented over 1,800 surgeries that he performed between 1850 and 1860 with hypnosis as the anesthesia. His procedures included appendectomies, amputations, bowel resections, mastectomies, hemorrhoidectomies, and suprapubic prostate surgery. Today we call it hypnothesia, and we use it to mute and altogether block the pain of root canals, tooth extractions, childbirth, cystoscopes, colonoscopies, and burn debridement. Hypnosis for burn debridement does not slow the flow of blood to the grafts as does morphine. The anxiousness and fear of undergoing the procedure is eliminated by the hypnosis itself, as is any post-surgery grogginess. Clinical professor at UCLA, the late Dr. William S. Kroger, a physician cross-disciplined in OB-GYN, general surgery, neuroendocrinology, and hypnothesia, filmed and used closed-circuit TV to document his work and for teaching purposes. These videos are available for viewing on the Internet. In one instance, Dr. Kroger demonstrated the use of hypnosis as the sole anesthesia when he removed a woman's enlarged thyroid gland. After the hour-long surgery was completed, the patient got off the OR table and asked for a drink of water and got into her wheelchair for the ride back to her room. She was quoted as saying, "I felt no pain. I could only feel pressure and what seemed like a tugging at my throat." I'm far from advocating that all surgeries should be performed without anesthesia, chemical anesthesia. However, for routine childbirth, root canals, tooth extractions, colonoscopies, cystoscopic exams, and for those with allergic reactions to chemical anesthesia, hypnosis is an alternative to, or at least an adjunct to, chemical anesthesia. On the clinical side, we work with addictions and others presenting problems with emotional components like alleviating the symptoms of IBS, Crohn's, and fibromyalgia. Throughout the years, I've had patient after patient become free of symptoms. I don't say cured, but free of symptoms from these ailments. In 2010, a woman came to our offices that had been diagnosed with and suffered from Crohn's disease for 21 years. She wore a diaper, and leaving her home was fraught with fear, as she didn't know when she'd have an incident. When she first presented, she was taking 34 drops a day of tincture of opium. At first, she came twice a week for her hypnotherapy sessions. As her symptoms abated, we went to weekly hypnosis sessions. 2.5 months later, she was asymptomatic and has been so for almost 3 years. It took another 3 months, though, to break the addiction to opium. We see individuals for anxieties, test and otherwise, fears, phobias, addictions, conversion disorder, and to move past and to become free of post-traumatic stress disorder and to enable them to lose weight permanently. Hypnosis will also enable one to make the behavioral changes needed to stop smoking, to improve in sales and business, and for sports performance like Ironman competitions, golf, and tennis. And then we move to the other side of the spectrum, where we enable individuals to dial down and even block the nausea and fatigue of chemo. Why does hypnosis encompass so much of the human condition? Because we're dealing with the mind, and the mind is one's master computer. Again, the only way to access the subconscious mind deliberately is through hypnosis, as hypnosis is the bridge to the subconscious mind. Hopefully, when the subject of hypnosis comes up, you'll be reminded of the medical and clinical applications rather than the antics of a stage hypnotist. It was good to be with you today, and please feel free to call me if you have any questions at all.